My name is Athena Wells. I'm 32 years old, and I just realized I was never really a daughter in my family. The day I received the call from my mother, just 3 weeks before my wedding, telling me that my parents couldn't attend because it fell on my sister's birthday, I was standing in a bridal fitting room with a white veil in my hands. 32 years of being the older daughter, 8 years of sending $2,500 every month, and one 47-second phone call to shatter every illusion I'd ever held. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just set the phone down and did something I should have done years ago. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear the rest. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop a comment and let me know. To understand why a 47-second phone call changed everything, I need to take you back to the years when I was called the family cash machine. I grew up in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, a 3-bedroom house with a backyard that my mother loved to show off to the neighbors. Clarissa got the bedroom with the window overlooking the garden. I got the small room next to the garage where I could hear the water heater groaning every night. From as far back as I can remember, my mother had a particular way of introducing us. "This is Clarissa, my daughter," she'd say, her hand resting proudly on my sister's shoulder. Then, almost as an afterthought, "And this is Athena, Clarissa's older sister." Not her daughter, Clarissa's sister. As if my entire existence was defined by my relationship to the golden child. By 14, I was working part-time at a local bakery to pay for my own school supplies. Clarissa never had to lift a finger. Mom bought her new clothes every season, the latest phone, whatever she wanted. I wore hand-me-downs from cousins and learned to stretch a dollar until it screamed. When I turned 16, I saved up for 6 months to buy a used Toyota Corolla, 2005, dented bumper, air conditioning that worked when it felt like it. I was so proud of that car. It represented every early morning shift, every birthday I spent frosting cupcakes for strangers instead of celebrating with friends. 2 years later, when Clarissa graduated high school, Mom and Dad surprised her with a brand new Mazda 3. Cherry red, leather seats, the whole package. "She deserves it," Mom said when she caught me staring. "She worked so hard in school." Clarissa had a 2.8 GPA. I graduated with a 3.7 while working 20 hours a week. I didn't hate Clarissa. I just hated that love in my family seemed to come with a price tag, and I was always the one paying. The real bleeding started when I was 24. I just graduated from community college with a degree in restaurant management. Nothing fancy, but I'd earned it while working full-time as a line cook. I landed a job as a prep cook at a Marriott hotel, and for the first time in my life, I had a steady paycheck and a glimpse of what independence might feel like. Then Mom called. "Athena, it's an emergency." Her voice was tight, the way it always got when she wanted something. "Your father lost his job. We can't make the mortgage this month. We need $3,000. $3,000. I didn't have $3,000, but I had a credit card with a $5,000 limit that I'd been carefully protecting for emergencies. This was an emergency, right? My parents might lose their house. I maxed out my credit card and wired the money that same day. "Thank you, sweetheart," Mom said when she confirmed the transfer. "We knew we could count on you." For the next 3 months, I ate ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I picked up extra shifts until my feet ached and my hands cracked from washing dishes. I paid down that credit card balance penny by penny. Meanwhile, my parents posted photos on Facebook of their weekend dinners at Red Lobster. Clarissa uploaded selfies from a spa day. Mommy-daughter bonding! I told myself it was a one-time thing. They were in a tough spot. Family helps family. But that was the test, wasn't it? And I passed it too well, so they never stopped giving me new ones. What I didn't know then was that this first emergency was just the opening act of an 8-year performance, and I was the only one paying for tickets. 4 years later, I met Marcus Cole at a company Christmas party. I was 28 by then, working as a sous chef at a boutique restaurant downtown. I'd clawed my way up from prep cook, learned to make sauces that could make grown men weep, and still, I was sending money home every single month. The amount had stabilized at $2,500. Like clockwork, like a bill I couldn't cancel. Marcus was a software engineer. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who actually listened when you talked. He wasn't flashy. He drove a Honda Civic and wore the same navy blazer to every event. But when he looked at me, he saw me. Not what I could give him, just me. 3 months into dating, he noticed something. Athena, why do you transfer so much money to your parents every month? He was helping me set up a budget spreadsheet. His love language was apparently Excel formulas. This is more than most people pay in rent. I froze. No one had ever asked me that before. Because if I don't, I'm a bad daughter, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Marcus set down his coffee cup. He looked at me with those steady brown eyes. No judgment, just concern. What if we tracked it? He said slowly. Every dollar you've sent them since you started working, just so you know exactly where you stand. That night, we built a spreadsheet together. Dates, amounts, reasons listed in the notes column, emergency car repair, Clarissa's textbooks, medical bills, mortgage help, again. The numbers climbed higher than I expected, much higher. You're not a bad daughter, Athena, Marcus said softly, his hand covering mine. Love isn't supposed to be a loan you can never pay off. That spreadsheet would become the most important document of my life. I'd wanted to own a bakery since I was 16. It started with my grandmother, my mother's mother, though you wouldn't know it from how differently they treated me. Grandma Ruth lived in a tiny cottage with a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and butter. She taught me to make her famous cinnamon rolls from scratch, kneading the dough until my arms burned, watching the glaze drip just right. You have a gift, Athena, she'd say, flour dusting her silver hair. These hands were made to create something sweet in a world that's often bitter. She died when I was 19. Left me nothing but her recipes and a locket I still wear every day. But the dreams stayed. By 29, I'd started taking custom cake orders on weekends. Wedding cakes, birthday cakes, elaborate creations that took hours to decorate. I squirreled away every dollar I could, dreaming of a small storefront with my name on the door. When I finally told my mother about my plans, she laughed. A bakery? Athena, be realistic. Do you know how many small businesses fail in the first year? She shook her head like I'd suggested opening a casino on the moon. You have a stable job. Why would you throw that away? Clarissa chimed in from the couch, not even looking up from her phone. Are you seriously going to sell cupcakes for a living? That's so quaint. Dad said nothing. He never said anything. That Christmas, they gifted Clarissa a set of premium golf clubs for networking, Mom explained, while I got a gift card to Target. The message was clear. My dreams weren't worth investing in. I was only valuable for what I could give them. But I kept saving anyway. Some dreams are too precious to let other people kill. The first time I met Robert and Helen Cole, I didn't know families could be like that. Marcus drove me to their house on a Sunday afternoon, a modest colonial in Lake Oswego with rose bushes lining the walkway. Nothing extravagant but warm, lived in. Helen opened the door before we even knocked. You must be Athena. She pulled me into a hug like we'd known each other for years. Marcus has told us so much about you. Come in, come in. I just took the pot roast out of the oven. The dining table was set with actual cloth napkins. Candles flickered in the center. Robert stood to shake my hand, his grip firm but gentle. So, Athena, he said, passing me the bread basket. Marcus tells me you're a talented chef. What's your specialty? No one had ever asked me that. My own parents had never once asked about my work, my passions, what made me come alive. Pastry, I managed. I want to open a bakery someday. Helen's face lit up. Oh, that's wonderful! Robert, isn't that wonderful? It is, Robert agreed. You know, I work in commercial real estate. When you're ready to look at spaces, let me know. I might be able to help with the lease negotiations. I stared at him. This man I'd just met, offering to help me achieve a dream my own parents had mocked. On the drive home, I cried. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, alarmed. "Nothing's wrong," I whispered. I just, I didn't know it could feel like this. Feel like what? Like being wanted without having to pay for it. That night, I understood for the first time what I'd been missing, and what I refused to let my future children miss. Then Clarissa got engaged, and everything escalated. She met Brad at a rooftop bar downtown, a stockbroker with slicked back hair and a Rolex he mentioned in every conversation. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within 7, my mother was on the phone demanding my contribution to the wedding fund. $15,000, Athena. That's your share. I nearly dropped the phone. My share? Mom, I'm trying to save for my own future. Your future? She laughed, that sharp sound I knew too well. Clarissa is getting married now. This is her special day. You can save money next year. I've been saving for years. I'm trying to open a bakery. Yes, I know. You can open a bakery anytime. Your sister only gets married once. I wanted to say no. Every fiber of my being screamed to say no. But then Mom started crying. Not the gentle tears of genuine emotion, the loud, gasping sobs she deployed like weapons. How can you be so selfish? Do you want me to die of embarrassment in front of Brad's family? They're wealthy, Athena. We have to make a good impression. In the end, I sent $10,000. It wiped out my entire bakery fund. Clarissa's wedding was at the Multnomah Athletic Club. Vera Wang gown, ice sculpture, a live jazz band. I stood in the wedding party wearing a pink bridesmaid dress Mom picked out specifically because it won't draw attention away from the bride. No one thanked me for my contribution, not once. At the reception, I overheard my mother telling Brad's parents, "We're so proud of both our girls, but Clarissa has always been the special one." I smiled and kept pouring champagne. 2 years later, when it was my turn to walk down the aisle, I'd learn exactly how special I was to them. Marcus proposed on a rainy evening in April, in the garden where my grandmother used to grow her herbs. The cottage had been sold years ago, but the new owners had kept the garden. Rosemary, lavender, thyme still growing wild in the beds Grandma Ruth had tended. Marcus had somehow gotten their permission to bring me there, to kneel in the damp earth with a ring box in his hand. The ring wasn't a diamond. It was a sapphire, the stone from my grandmother's locket, which Marcus had secretly taken to a jeweler months earlier. He'd had it reset into something new, something that carried my history into our future. I said yes before he finished asking. That night, floating on happiness, I called my mother to share the news. Engaged? Mom's voice was flat. To the computer guy? What does his family do? He's a software engineer, Mom, and his parents are wonderful people. But are they established? What kind of wedding can they afford? I felt my joy deflating like a punctured balloon. I didn't call to discuss finances. I called to tell you I'm getting married. A long pause, then, well, at least he has a stable job. I suppose that's something. No congratulations. No tears of happiness. No, I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. Later that night, Clarissa texted, "You're getting married before our 2-year anniversary? Kind of tacky TBH. Marcus found me in the kitchen, staring at my phone. They didn't take it well, did they? He asked quietly. They didn't take it at all. They just inventoried it, like I was announcing a business merger instead of the happiest day of my life. He pulled me close. Then we'll celebrate with people who actually care. My parents are already planning a dinner. I should have known then. The signs were all there, written in neon. But hope is a stubborn thing, and I still believed that when my wedding day came, my parents would show up. 6 months before the wedding, I signed the lease on a tiny storefront on Southeast Division Street. Sweet Dawn Bakery. The name came to me in a dream, My grandmother standing in morning light, pulling cinnamon rolls from the oven, the kitchen glowing gold. Robert Cole had found the space during one of his property searches. "The rent's manageable," he said, sliding the paperwork across his dining room table. "And the previous tenant left the ovens. You just need to bring in your own equipment." Helen brought me a vintage cake stand from an estate sale. "For good luck," she said, pressing it into my hands. I was still sending my parents $2,500 every month, even as I scraped together deposits and first month rent. I was stretched so thin I could feel myself fraying at the edges. But I refused to stop. Not yet. Family was family, even when family didn't feel like family. When I showed my mother photos of the bakery space, she squinted at her phone screen. "It's small," she said. "Are you sure you'll get enough customers?" "I have to start somewhere, Mom. I just worry about you wasting money. Clarissa's been talking about opening a nail salon. Maybe you could help her get started instead." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. A week later, I was at Robert and Helen's house, organizing my business tax documents, when Robert paused over a stack of bank statements I'd brought. 8 years of transfers, $2,500, month after month, plus the larger emergencies. The total was staggering. Robert didn't say a word. He just looked at me with eyes full of something I couldn't name. Sadness, maybe, or recognition. "You've done more than your duty, Athena," he said quietly. "I want you to know that." I didn't realize until later that Robert had seen everything, and that his witnessing would matter more than I could imagine. 2 months before the wedding, I sent out save-the-date cards. I'd designed them myself, simple cream cardstock with pressed lavender from Helen's garden. "June 15th, it read. "Please join us for the wedding of Athena Marie Wells and Marcus James Cole." I hand-delivered my parents' invitation, hoping that seeing me in person might spark something, some flicker of excitement, some acknowledgement that their daughter was getting married. Mom glanced at the card and frowned. "June 15th? Let me check the calendar." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through dates, and sighed. "That's close to Clarissa's birthday, you know. She turns 28 on the 17th. "I know when Clarissa's birthday is, Mom. The wedding's on the 15th. "Still." She set the invitation on the kitchen counter next to a stack of grocery coupons. "We might have plans." Clarissa wandered into the kitchen, grabbed a yogurt from the fridge, and spotted the card. "Oh, your wedding thing? Brad wants to go to Cabo that weekend. I'll try to make it, but no promises." Dad sat in the living room the entire time, watching a golf tournament. He didn't even turn around. On the drive home, I called Marcus. "They didn't commit," I said, my voice hollow. "They said they might have plans." "For your wedding?" "For my wedding." A long silence. Then Marcus said gently, "Athena, maybe it's time to accept that your family isn't capable of being what you need them to be." "They'll come," I insisted. "When the actual day arrives, they'll be there. I know they will." "And if they're not?" I didn't answer. I couldn't imagine it. My own parents choosing not to witness the most important day of my life. It seemed too cruel, too impossible. 6 weeks later, I learned that cruelty was exactly what they were capable of. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in late May. I was standing in a bridal shop downtown, surrounded by mirrors that showed me from every angle. The dress was ivory silk with delicate beading at the neckline, simple but elegant, the kind of gown I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl watching movies where fathers walked their daughters down the aisle. My phone buzzed. "Mom." "Hi, Mom. I'm actually at my final fitting right now." "Athena, I need to tell you something." Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reading from a grocery list. "Your father and I won't be able to make it to the wedding." The fitting room went silent. The consultant who'd been adjusting my hem looked up, concerned. "What do you mean you won't be able to make it?" "June 15th is Clarissa's birthday weekend. Brad is throwing her an early party on the 15th since it works better for their schedules. We can't miss our daughter's birthday celebration." "Mom, her birthday is the 17th, and I'm getting married on the 15th. Sweetheart, your sister only has one birthday a year. You could have picked a different date. I stared at my reflection. A woman in a wedding dress, phone pressed to her ear, world collapsing in slow motion. You're choosing Clarissa's birthday party over my wedding. Don't be dramatic. You know how important these milestones are for her. Brad's colleagues will be there. It's networking. I'm your daughter too, Mom. Of course you are, but Clarissa needs us more right now. You've always been so independent, Athena. You'll be fine. 47 seconds. That's how long the call lasted. I checked afterward. 47 seconds to dismantle 32 years of desperate hoping. I understand, I said quietly. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. The consultant asked if I was all right. I looked at my reflection one more time, a bride with no family to witness her vows, and something inside me shifted permanently. I didn't cry in the bridal shop. I finished my fitting, paid the balance, and walked out into the sunshine like nothing had happened. Marcus was waiting at home when I arrived. How was the fitting? He asked, then saw my face. Athena, what's wrong? I told him. Every word my mother had said, every careful syllable that had carved another piece out of my heart. Marcus didn't rage or rant, he just crossed the room and held me. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. I pulled back, looked at him. Actually, that's not true. I do know. That night, after dinner, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone. The banking app glowed in the darkness. I navigated to the recurring transfers. $2,500, scheduled for the first of every month, payee, Gerald and Diane Wells. 8 years. $247,500. I knew the exact number because Marcus and I had tallied it months ago. More than enough for a down payment on a house, more than enough to build a life, and in return, not even their presence at my wedding. My finger hovered over the cancel button. You don't have to decide tonight, Marcus said softly from the doorway. Yes, I do. I looked at him. If I wait until morning, I'll talk myself out of it. I'll tell myself that maybe they'll change their minds, that maybe I'm overreacting. But I'm not overreacting, am I? No, he said. You're not. I pressed cancel, then confirm. The screen refreshed. The recurring transfer disappeared, replaced by empty space. I didn't send a text explaining my decision. I didn't call to argue or justify. I simply stopped giving and waited to see if anyone would notice me for anything other than my money. They would notice, but not the way I hoped. On June 15th, I married the love of my life in the backyard of Robert and Helen Cole's home. 87 guests gathered under a canopy of string lights and white roses. The weather was perfect, clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of day that felt designed for beginnings. Marcus's colleagues sat next to my coworkers from the restaurant. Friends from high school mingled with regulars from Sweet Dawn Bakery, which had been open for 3 months by then. From my side of the family, one person. Aunt Susan, my mother's younger sister, the black sheep who'd been frozen out for refusing to lend my parents money years ago. She drove 4 hours to be there. I wouldn't have missed this for the world, she said, hugging me tight. Grandma Ruth would have been so proud of you. Helen helped me into my dress. She didn't try to replace my mother. She simply stepped into the gap with grace and warmth, adjusting my veil, dabbing at the tears that kept threatening to fall. You're not losing anything today, she whispered. You're gaining everything you deserve. Robert walked me down the aisle. He offered the day before, quietly and without pressure. Only if you want me to, he'd said. No obligation. But when I took his arm and felt the steadiness of his presence, I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd baked my own wedding cake, lemon lavender, Grandma Ruth's recipe. It wasn't traditional, but nothing about this wedding was traditional. It was built from scratch by people who actually wanted to be there. That night, Marcus and I danced under the stars, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The absence of my parents ached, but the presence of my chosen family filled spaces I hadn't known were empty. If you've ever been the only one not in the family photo, you know what I mean. Sometimes the people who show up are more family than blood ever was. If that resonates with you, leave a comment saying, "I understand." And if you're wondering what happened when my parents finally realized the money had stopped, subscribe and stick around, because that storm was just beginning to gather. 2 weeks after my honeymoon, my mother called. I was at the bakery, frosting a 3-tier cake for an anniversary celebration, when her name lit up my screen. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. "Athena, there must be some mistake with your bank." Her voice was clipped, annoyed. "The transfer didn't come through this month." "There's no mistake, Mom." "What do you mean?" "I mean I stopped the transfers. I'm not sending money anymore." Silence. I could picture her standing in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, brain struggling to process the impossible. "You stopped? You can't just stop. We depend on that money. Your father and I have bills." "I know you have bills. I've been paying them for 8 years." "Exactly. So you understand how important— I understand that you chose Clarissa's birthday party over my wedding. I understand that after $247,000, I couldn't even get you to show up for one afternoon." More silence. Then quietly, dangerously. "So this is revenge? You're punishing us?" "No, Mom. This is me finally taking care of my own family. Marcus and I are building a life together. I'm running a business. I can't keep subsidizing a family that treats me like an ATM with a heartbeat." "How dare you?" "I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you of a change." "Athena Marie Wells, if you do this, you will regret it. Family is forever. When you need us, we won't be there for you." I almost laughed. When had they ever been there for me? "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and returned to my frosting. My hands were shaking, but my heart was steady. She'd said I'd regret it. 6 months later, she'd be the one learning about regret. The guilt trip campaign started within 48 hours. First came Dad's call, the first time he'd voluntarily dialed my number in years. "Athena, honey, your mother's been crying for 2 days straight. She can't eat, can't sleep, you're breaking her heart." "She broke mine first, Dad." That's That's not the same thing. We're your parents. We sacrificed so much to raise you girls." "Did you sacrifice, Dad? Or did I?" He didn't have an answer for that. Then came Clarissa's texts, rapid fire and furious. "Mom told me what you did. How could you be so cruel? They literally raised you, and this is how you repay them? You're being incredibly selfish. Some of us don't make as much money as you." I didn't respond to any of them. The only voice of sanity came from Aunt Susan, who called one evening while I was closing up the bakery. "Your mother phoned me asking for money," she said dryly. "First time she's spoken to me in 5 years. I told her what I told her back then, not my problem." "Did she say anything about me?" "Oh, plenty. According to her, you've become heartless and ungrateful. She also mentioned you abandoned the family in their hour of need." Susan paused. "Athena, do you know what your mother did to your grandmother? Exact same thing. Bled her dry until there was nothing left, then blamed her for not having more to give." The pattern. It had been right in front of me my entire life. That night, lying next to Marcus in bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was doing the right thing. "Am I being cruel?" I whispered. "No," he said, "you're being free." But freedom, I was learning, came with its own weight. The doubts came in waves, usually at 3 a.m. I'd wake up in the darkness, heart pounding, the same questions cycling through my mind. Am I a bad daughter? Am I as selfish as they say? Will I regret this forever? One night, I slipped out of bed and sat on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, phone in hand. My finger hovered over my mother's contact. One call, one apology. Everything could go back to normal. But what was normal? Normal was giving until I had nothing left. Normal was being invisible except when they needed something. Normal was a one-way door that only opened when money flowed through. Marcus found me there at dawn. "Come back to bed," he said gently, sitting down beside me on the cold tile. "I keep thinking I should just fix it. Send the money again. Make them happy." Would that make you happy? The question hung in the air. I didn't have to answer. That Sunday, we had dinner at Robert and Helen's. I barely touched my food, pushing pot roast around my plate while conversation flowed around me. After dinner, Helen caught my hand. "You're carrying something heavy, sweetheart. I can see it." "I'm fine, Helen." "You're allowed to not be fine." She squeezed my fingers. "And you're allowed to protect yourself from people who hurt you, even if they share your blood. Loving yourself isn't selfish, it's survival." Robert cleared his throat from the doorway. "I saw your bank statements, Athena, months ago when we were doing the bakery taxes." He met my eyes. $247,000. You gave them everything, and they didn't even come to your wedding. You didn't fail them, they failed you. For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. I wasn't a bad daughter. I was a daughter who'd finally stopped paying for love that was never for sale. 8 months passed, and life began to bloom. Sweet Dawn Bakery had found its footing. A local food blogger discovered us in March and wrote a glowing review, a hidden gem tucked away on Division Street. Orders doubled, then tripled. I hired 2 part-time employees, Mia, a culinary school graduate, and Devin, a single dad looking for flexible hours. The bakery was becoming what I'd always dreamed it could be, a place where people came not just for cinnamon rolls and lavender shortbread, but for warmth. Regulars knew each other's names. Birthday cakes were ordered months in advance. We'd started a tradition of giving free cookies to kids who came in after school, and then, in April, I peed on a stick and saw 2 pink lines, pregnant. Marcus and I stood in our tiny bathroom, staring at the test like it might change its mind. Then he lifted me off my feet and spun me around, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby," he kept saying. "We're having a baby." Helen wept when we told her. Robert made terrible jokes about teaching the baby to negotiate real estate deals. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be celebrated, not for what I could give, but simply for existing. My parents remained silent. After months of ignored texts and unanswered calls, they'd stopped trying to reach me. I assumed they'd found some other solution to their money problems, or that Clarissa had stepped up for once. I was wrong. "Athena," Aunt Susan said during one of our regular calls, "you should know something. Your mother's been asking around the family for loans. Apparently, Clarissa made some bad investments. Very bad." The other shoe was about to drop. I just didn't know it would fall directly into my bakery. The full story came out in pieces. According to Aunt Susan, who'd gathered intelligence from various relatives, Clarissa had convinced my parents to invest their savings in a guaranteed opportunity that Brad had discovered. Some combination of cryptocurrency and multi-level marketing that promised incredible returns. $80,000, gone in 3 months. "Brad's cousin ran the whole thing," Susan explained over the phone. "Turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. The cousin disappeared to Mexico. Brad and Clarissa are getting divorced." I sank onto the bench outside my bakery, phone pressed to my ear. "And my parents?" "They used the money you'd been sending as a safety net for years. Without it, they don't have enough to cover the mortgage. They're 3 months behind. The bank sent a notice." I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt that warm rush of schadenfreude that comes when people who hurt you face consequences. Instead, I just felt tired. "They're going to lose the house," I said. "Maybe, unless they find someone to bail them out." A text notification buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Clarissa's name appeared for the first time in months. "Hey sis, can we talk? I know we haven't been close, but family is family, right? We should catch up, maybe grab coffee?" I stared at the message. After 8 months of silence, after skipping my wedding, after years of treating me like the family servant. "Family is family." I typed a reply. I'm busy with the bakery. What do you need? The response came instantly. Nothing specific. Just wanted to reconnect. BTW, Mom mentioned you're doing really well with the business. That's so great. We should celebrate. Maybe you could help us figure out some financial stuff too. There it was. The ask, dressed up in casual clothes. I didn't reply, but I started preparing for what I knew was coming. That weekend, I spread 8 years across my kitchen table. Bank statements printed and organized by year. The spreadsheet Marcus and I had built together, now complete with every transfer, every emergency, every dollar that had flowed from my account to my parents. Transaction dates highlighted in yellow, running totals in bold. $247,500. What are you doing? Marcus asked, setting 2 cups of coffee on the table. Making sure I know exactly what happened. I shuffled through the pages. If they come asking for money, when they come asking, I want the facts in front of me, not emotions. Facts. You think they'll actually show up? I know they will. They've exhausted everyone else. I'm the last option. He sat down beside me, studying the documents. And what will you say? I don't know yet. But I won't let them twist this. I won't let them make me the villain in a story where I gave everything and got nothing back. On the corner of the table sat another piece of paper, the ultrasound image from my 12-week appointment. Our baby, the size of a lime, heartbeat strong and steady. I picked it up, holding it beside the bank statements. This is what I'm protecting now, I said softly. This baby will never have to buy their grandmother's love. They'll never be compared to a cousin or told their dreams aren't worth investing in. They'll know, from day one, that they're enough exactly as they are. Marcus covered my hand with his. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. I nodded, gathering the documents into a neat folder. The confrontation was coming. I could feel it building like a storm on the horizon. But this time I wouldn't be defenseless. This time the truth would speak for me. The 1-year anniversary celebration of Sweet Dawn Bakery fell on a Saturday in late October. I'd planned it for months. A proper grand opening, the kind I couldn't afford when I first started. We decorated the shop with autumn leaves and golden lights. The display cases overflowed with seasonal treats. Pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls, maple pecan tarts, apple cider donuts. A reporter from the Portland Monthly had confirmed she'd stop by for a feature on local women-owned businesses. By noon, the bakery was buzzing. Regulars filled the cafe tables. Robert and Helen arrived with flowers and champagne. Marcus moved through the crowd, shaking hands, making everyone feel welcome. I was behind the counter, boxing up a custom cake, when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. My mother walked in first, wearing a dress I'd never seen, probably purchased before their financial troubles. Behind her came my father, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room nervously. And behind them both, Clarissa, thinner than I remembered, makeup not quite concealing the dark circles under her eyes. No one was smiling. The chatter in the bakery quieted. Something in the air shifted, that instinctive awareness when conflict enters a space. Mom spotted me behind the counter. She straightened her shoulders and walked directly toward me, weaving between customers like they weren't even there. Athena, her voice carried across the shop. We need to talk. About family. Helen, standing near the pastry case, moved closer to me. Robert set down his champagne flute. Marcus appeared at my elbow. This isn't really the time, Mom. When is the time? You won't answer our calls. You won't reply to messages. She gestured around the bakery. But you have time for all of this. Every eye in the room was on us now. I took a breath. Okay, Mom, let's talk about family. My mother had never learned the art of reading a room. You abandoned us. Her voice rang through the bakery, sharp enough to cut glass. Your own parents, your own family, and you just cut us off, without warning, without any consideration for what we've done for you. I felt Marcus's hand on my back, steady, grounding. Behind Mom, I saw a regular customer, Mrs. Patterson, set down her coffee cup with a concerned frown. Mom, this really isn't... Do you have any idea what we're going through? She continued, undeterred. Your father hasn't slept in weeks. We might lose our home. And you're here, throwing parties and acting like we don't exist. Clarissa stepped forward, playing her supporting role. She's right, Athena. You have this successful business, and you can't even help your own mother? What kind of daughter does that? I noticed the Portland Monthly reporter had taken out her phone. Recording or note-taking, I couldn't tell. What kind of daughter? I repeated quietly. That's a good question, Clarissa. Let me show you what kind. Dad finally spoke, his voice soft and pleading. Athena, sweetheart, let's not make a scene. Just come home. Talk to us privately. We can work this out like a family. A family? Something in me snapped. Not violently, but cleanly, like a knot finally pulling free. Is that what we are? I reached below the counter, where I'd stored the folder this morning. Part of me had known. Part of me had been waiting. You came here to ask for money, I said, setting the folder on the counter. You came in front of all these people, hoping to shame me into writing a check. So let's do this properly, Mom. Let's talk about what this family has really looked like for the past 8 years. I opened the folder. These are bank statements, I said, spreading the pages across the counter. 8 years of transfers from my account to yours. Would you like to know the total, Mom? $247,500. The number hung in the air like smoke. My mother's face went pale. Clarissa's mouth fell open. My father stared at the documents like they might burst into flames. Every month, I continued, keeping my voice level, I sent you $2,500, sometimes more, when there was an emergency. Clarissa's wedding? $10,000 from my savings. Dad's surgery? $8,000, which I later learned was actually for a golf trip. The burst pipe last year? Clarissa's spa weekend. I pointed to a specific page. This is June 15th, my wedding day. Notice anything special? No transfer from you, no gift, no card. You didn't even show up because you were at Clarissa's birthday party. A party that wasn't even on her actual birthday. Mrs. Patterson gasped. The reporter's phone was definitely recording now. $247,000, and I couldn't buy your presents for one afternoon. I closed the folder. So no, Mom. I'm not abandoning the family. The family abandoned me a long time ago. I just finally noticed. Clarissa sputtered. You're making this about money when it's about love. Is it? Then tell me, Clarissa, when was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for something, just to see how I was doing. Silence. I'll wait. More silence. I placed my hand on my stomach, still flat, but holding everything that mattered. I'm pregnant, I said. And my child will never have to wonder if their grandmother loves them, because they'll have one who does. She's standing right there. I looked at Helen. She was crying. Athena, you can't do this. My mother's voice cracked, not from sadness, I realized, but from the humiliation of being exposed. She glanced at the watching customers, at the reporter, at the undeniable evidence spread across the counter. People are watching. You're embarrassing us. No, Mom. You embarrassed yourself the day you chose a birthday party over your daughter's wedding. I'm just done covering for you. I gathered the bank statements and returned them to the folder. My hands weren't shaking. My voice wasn't trembling. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly solid. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave my bakery. You're going to stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up at my business demanding money. And I'm going to continue living my life with my husband, my in-laws, and my baby. Your baby? Mom's eyes dropped to my stomach. You're having a baby and you weren't even going to tell us. Why would I? So you could ask how much it would affect my income. Clarissa's face twisted. This is insane. You're cutting us off completely? Over some old grudge? It's not a grudge, Clarissa. It's a boundary. Dad stepped forward, finally. Athena, please. I know we've made mistakes. Mistakes? I looked at him, really looked. Mistakes are forgetting a birthday. Mistakes are missing a phone call. Choosing not to attend your daughter's wedding is a choice, Dad, and so is what I'm doing now. Helen moved to stand beside me. Robert positioned himself at my other side. Marcus's hand found mine. My family. My real family. This bakery is called Sweet Dawn, I said quietly. Do you know why? Because my grandmother, the one you ignored until she had nothing left, she told me I could create something sweet in a world that's often bitter. That's what I'm doing. Without you. I nodded toward the door. Please leave. The room held its breath. If this moment resonates with you, if you've ever had to choose your peace over someone else's expectations, comment, respect. And if you want to know what happened after they walked out that door, stay with me. We're almost at the end. For a moment, nobody moved. My mother's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Shock, then anger, then something that might have been shame if she were capable of feeling it. Clarissa had tears streaming down her cheeks, though whether from genuine hurt or wounded pride, I couldn't tell. And then a voice cut through the silence. Excuse me. Mrs. Patterson, 63 years old, retired schoolteacher, regular customer since day one, rose from her table. I've been coming to this bakery every Saturday for a year, she said, addressing my mother directly. Athena remembers my husband's name, asks about his treatments, saves his favorite muffin even when it sells out. Last month, when I couldn't afford a birthday cake for my grandson, she made one anyway and wouldn't let me pay. She pointed at the folder of bank statements. That woman gave you $250,000 and you couldn't show up to her wedding? Mrs. Patterson's voice shook with indignation. You should be ashamed. A murmur rippled through the bakery, heads nodding. Someone in the back muttered, Unbelievable. My mother's composure crumbled. She grabbed my father's arm, dragging him toward the door. Let's go, Gerald. We don't need to be humiliated by strangers. You humiliated yourselves, Mrs. Patterson called after them. All she did was show the receipts. Clarissa hesitated, looking at me with something approaching confusion, like she genuinely didn't understand how we'd arrived at this moment, like she'd never considered that actions had consequences. Clarissa, I said quietly, goodbye. She turned and followed our parents out the door. The bell chimed, the door swung shut. And just like that, 32 years of trying to earn my family's love came to an end. Helen wrapped her arms around me. Marcus kissed my temple. Mrs. Patterson returned to her coffee with a satisfied nod. The celebration continued. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange, peaceful blur. The Portland Monthly reporter approached me after my family left, notepad in hand. I came to write about women entrepreneurs, she said carefully. But that was something else. Do you want me to leave it out? I considered the question. Part of me wanted to hide, to keep the ugliness private. But another part, the part that had spent 32 years being invisible, was tired of staying small. Write what you saw, I said. But this story isn't about revenge, it's about building something worth protecting. She nodded, scribbled something down, and ordered a box of cinnamon rolls. By evening, the crowd had thinned. Marcus swept the floors while I wiped down tables. Robert and Helen insisted on washing dishes despite my protests. Let us help, Helen said firmly. That's what family does. I paused, rag in hand, watching them work together in my kitchen. Robert told terrible jokes. Helen pretended to be annoyed. Marcus laughed at both of them. This was my family now. Not by blood, but by choice. By showing up. Later, locking up for the night, Marcus pulled me close under the string lights we'd hung that morning. How do you feel? I thought about it. The confrontation, the bank statements, the public spectacle. I searched for the right word. Light. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. You didn't win, you know. There's no trophy for this. I know. I looked at my bakery, the warm lights, the display cases, the hand-painted sign. But I didn't lose either. I just finally stopped playing a game I could never win. He kissed my forehead. Ready to go home? Yeah, I smiled. I really am. In the 3 months that followed, I watched from a distance as consequences unfolded. Aunt Susan kept me updated, despite my protests that I didn't need to know. Your parents sold the house, she reported in December. Got less than market value because they were desperate. They're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Gresham now. I felt something when she told me. Not satisfaction exactly, but not grief either. More like the dull recognition of inevitability. What about Clarissa? Brad's gone. Moved to Seattle with some woman he met online. The divorce is nasty. She's living with your parents now, all 3 of them crammed into that apartment. I imagined it. My mother, who'd spent decades cultivating an image of suburban success, now sharing walls with strangers, listening to arguments through the floor. My sister, the golden child, reduced to sleeping in her childhood twin bed again. Your mom tried to email you, by the way. Something about reconciliation. I'd seen the email. 3 pages of carefully worded blame. How I'd misinterpreted their love. How every family has struggles. How holding grudges only hurts yourself. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just reframing the narrative to make me the villain again. I forwarded the email to a lawyer Marcus recommended, not to sue, just to document, in case they ever tried anything more aggressive. What should I tell her? Aunt Susan asked. If she asks about you? I thought about it. Tell her I'm happy. Tell her I'm building a life with people who show up. And if she asks for money? I almost laughed. Tell her the ATM is permanently closed. That Christmas, Marcus and I hosted dinner for 10. The Coles, Aunt Susan, co-workers from the bakery, friends who'd become family. We laughed and ate too much and didn't talk about the people who weren't there. Some absences are losses. Others are just space to breathe. On a warm evening in late May, I stood in the kitchen of Sweet Dawn Bakery, feeding my daughter. Lily Dawn Cole, 7 weeks old, with her father's brown eyes and, I like to imagine, my grandmother's stubborn chin. She'd arrived on a rainy April morning, and from the moment I held her, I understood something I'd been chasing my entire life. This warmth in my arms, this tiny human who needed nothing from me except presence. This was what love felt like. Helen had been there for the birth, holding my hand when Marcus stepped out to update the family. Robert paced the waiting room, practicing grandpa jokes. When Lily finally arrived, both of them cried harder than I did. She's perfect, Helen whispered, touching Lily's cheek with trembling fingers. She's absolutely perfect. I thought about calling my mother. The instinct was still there, buried deep, that little girl who just wanted her mom to care. But then I looked at Helen, at Robert, at the circle of people who'd chosen us, and the urge faded. The bakery had expanded. The Portland Monthly feature had brought an avalanche of new customers, and I'd hired 2 more employees to keep up with demand. We'd started selling online, shipping Grandma Ruth's cinnamon rolls across the country. Everything I'd ever wanted was right here. Not given to me, but built, brick by brick, batch by batch. One night, rocking Lily to sleep in our living room, I made her a silent promise. You will never wonder if your mother loves you. You will never feel like a burden. Your worth will never be measured in dollars transferred or favors owed. You will be celebrated for existing, nothing more, nothing less. She yawned, tiny fists uncurling, and drifted off against my chest. Outside, the sun set gold over Portland. A new dawn indeed. Marcus asked me once, in that quiet hour after Lily fell asleep, if I had any regrets. We were sitting on the back porch, watching fireflies blink in the garden. The question caught me off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because I had to actually think about it. I regret the time, I said finally. 8 years of hoping they'd change. 8 years of sending money like offerings to gods who were never listening. But not the ending? No, not the ending. I'd started therapy 3 months after the bakery confrontation, something Marcus gently encouraged and Helen not so gently insisted upon. It helped, having a professional untangle the knots I'd tied myself into. Understanding that my parents' behavior wasn't about me, that their inability to love me properly was their failure, not mine. One afternoon, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just for myself. Dear Athena, at 24, I know you're about to wire $3,000 to people who won't thank you. I know you believe this will earn you a seat at the table. It won't. Here's what I wish I could tell you. You're not obligated to purchase love that should be given freely. You're not selfish for having needs. And the family you're searching for isn't the one you were born into, it's the one you'll build. Start the bakery sooner. Trust Marcus earlier. Cry less. Save more. But most importantly, forgive yourself for taking so long to understand what you deserved. The journey mattered, even the painful parts. Love. Athena at 33. I kept the letter in my desk drawer, next to Lily's first ultrasound photo and the deed to Sweet Dawn Bakery. Proof that endings can also be beginnings, that some losses are actually liberations, that home isn't always where you came from, sometimes it's where you decide to stay. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, 1 year after the bakery confrontation. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My father's cramped cursive, the same script that had signed my childhood report cards without comment. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me hesitate. Athena, I know I don't deserve to write to you. Your mother doesn't know about this letter, and I'd prefer it stay that way. I've been thinking about your wedding day, the one I missed. I've been thinking about it for a year now, actually, replaying the moment your mother told us we were going to Clarissa's party instead. I should have said something. I should have gotten in the car and driven to you anyway. I didn't. I've spent my whole life not saying something, not doing something, letting your mother make decisions because it was easier than fighting. I told myself I was keeping the peace. But I was really just a coward. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not asking for money. We're managing barely, and that's more than we deserve. I just wanted you to know. I'm proud of you. I always was, even if I never said it. I'm proud of your bakery. I'm proud of your husband. I'm proud of the woman you've become, despite everything we didn't give you. You deserved better parents. I'm sorry you got us instead. Dad, I read the letter 3 times. Then I cried, not from pain, but from something harder to name. Grief, maybe, for the relationship we never had. Relief that somewhere, in some small way, he finally saw me. Marcus found me in the kitchen, letter in hand. Good news or bad? Neither. Just truth. Finally. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe someday. For now, I tucked the letter in my desk drawer and went to check on Lily. Some doors stay closed, others stay ajar. And that's okay too. If I'm being honest, and I've tried to be honest with you this whole time, I don't think my mother is evil. I think she's broken. She grew up poor, the daughter of immigrants who worked 3 jobs each and still couldn't afford heat in the winter. That kind of childhood leaves scars. She clawed her way into the middle class and spent the rest of her life terrified of sliding back. Clarissa, beautiful, charming, socially graceful, represented everything my mother wished she had been. I represented everything she was trying to escape. Plain, practical, hands always covered in flour. It wasn't about loving Clarissa more, it was about loving herself less, and seeing me as a mirror she didn't want to face. Does that excuse what she did? No. Does it explain it? Maybe. My father chose peace over justice, comfort over courage. He wasn't malicious, just weak. And weakness, in its own way, can wound as deeply as cruelty. I don't tell you this so you'll pity them. I tell you because understanding isn't the same as forgiving, and I think it's important to know the difference. So here's what I've learned, for whatever it's worth. Love with conditions isn't love, it's commerce. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's survival. And the family you build can be just as real as the family you're born into, sometimes realer. If you're someone's ATM, if you're always giving and never receiving, if you're standing in a wedding dress wondering why your parents aren't there, hear me. You're not broken, you're not selfish, you're just finally seeing clearly. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched something in you, leave a heart in the comments, or share your own experience if you're ready. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one, and check the description for another video I think you'll appreciate. Remember, dawn comes after darkness, every single time.